right. Well, welcome back. Apologize for the brief technical delay. Thanks to producer Jennifer for pulling things out of the ditch here. It's kind of reminds me of my first episode from last year, which actually never happened. So the supposed to be a February 17th episode last year that nobody even knows about because it never launched. But anyway, hopefully we'll not have any more connectivity issues, and we'll kind of jump back into our programming here. So, first thing I want to touch on today, there's some things going on within the soybean seed industry from a quality standpoint. If you remember back last fall, October, I don't know about at your place, but at our farm, I think we received right at 8 inches of rain in October. So we had a nearly record wet October. And there were a lot of soybeans in some areas that stood out through all of those October rains. And a lot of them were already mature by the time they stood out through those rains. And that's not really conducive to optimal seed quality from a soybean seed production standpoint. So this is not necessarily an agro issue per se, more of a soybean industry issue. But I would say that we are expecting to see more beans tagged below 90 germ than what we typically have. And I think you'll probably see that from other suppliers as well. One thing that is worth noting in this situation is that since this is not really a physical quality issue, it's more of a fungal issue because of some of the fungal pathogens that are on that seed because of the wet weather they went through. When you apply seed treatment to the seed quality actually improves. Sometimes when you've got seed that gets too dry in the field or it has physical damage, applying treatment can actually sometimes make it worse because you're handling that seed again. In this case, because there's a fungal pathogen on that seed, the fungicide that you put on in the treatment actually helps prevent that fungal pathogen from infecting the seed when it germinates. And so you get a higher germ score after that seed is treated. The challenge for Asgrow or any other seed company is we cannot predict what the germ will be after it's treated. We have to tag the germ what it is when it leaves our facility. So if it's a 83 germ seed, we'll probably tag it at 80 just to be conservative. And if when you add treatment to that, you gain 5 or 10 points of germ, you might have 90 germ seed, but we're not able to tag it at 90 germ. So just to make you aware that there will be some soybean seed tagged under 90% germ this year. If we go down to 80, there'll be a discount associated with that. So that will make that, that seed as good a deal, or depending on how you look at it, perhaps a better deal than what 85 or 90 germ seed without a discount would have been. We're also going to do some upstream treating with some fungicides to improve quality on some of the material that we have not shipped out yet. So just doing what we can as an industry and as a seed company to make sure that we've got a reliable supply of our key products and we have the best quality seed available to you that we can. But just a heads up, you should probably be prepared to see, some of your seed, perhaps a significant amount, depending on the variety and and the situation, that's tagged at something less than 90%. So I did want to make folks aware of that. If you have questions about that, reach out to me, reach out to your FSR, reach out to your dealer. We've been over the past few weeks communicating with dealers about what's going on from a quality standpoint, supply standpoint. Some of these changes we're making to doing some more upstream treating are fairly recent changes that we've just started talking about here the past few days. So kind of still a fluid situation and more yet to come on that, but just wanted to keep keep people in the loop on that. I wouldn't be, we'll still stand behind that product. We're still going to offer the same replant guarantees. The product is good quality product. So, you should, be willing to plant, whether it's 80, 85 or 90, you can plant that seed with confidence and know that we're going to stand behind the performance of that product. So it's something that people get concerned about. Everybody wants to have the best quality seed. Everybody would rather somebody else get the low germ stuff, but we'll probably all have to do our part there and to make that situation work out best as we can. From a supply standpoint, there's a lot of supply challenges in the seed industry this year. There's always things that are tight. Seems like this year there's probably more stuff that's tight than normal. Some of that is, due to products that perform different than expectations. And so if you've got a big pile of something that you expected to sell that you're not selling because it didn't perform up to expectations, that puts a lot more supply pressure on other products that exceeded expectations of performance. And with seed, a lot of things are this way. Even a herbicide or some other product that gets manufactured, you can't necessarily just crank up the spigot and make more supply right there in the heat of the moment. But seed's even worse because it's grown a year ahead of time basically, and once you've got that supply production plan in the ground, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature to see what those fields are going to yield, to see what kind of quality you're going to have, to see how much supply you end up with. But whatever you end up with at the end of that growing season, that's what you got to get through the sales year. And once it's gone, it's going to be next year before you have opportunity to grow more of that. So that's something that we're in the midst of right now, is supply planning for the 2023 growing season. So it might, if you haven't, if you're a seed dealer, you're probably familiar with this. If you're a grower, you might not have thought about this a lot, but for a seed company to have what you want when you want it, that planning process starts, several years, frankly, ahead of time to grow the parent material to produce the hybrid or the variety that we want to have available for you to plant in 23. So in about 2 weeks from today, we will finalize what we call our supply production plan for 2023. And so we are going to do our best to forecast, predict, educated guess what you're going to want to buy from us for the 23 growing season. And we'll sign off on that here in a couple of weeks. We'll put that production plan in the ground this spring. We take some upside risk on that. So we grow more than we anticipate we will need to give ourselves a bit of a cushion. But you just never know how, our seed fields are no different than your farm. You have a goal of what you think your farm's going to yield. You might exceed that goal. You might fall short of that goal. Our seed fields are the same. You also have to factor in, if you're just raising commodities, all you're worried about is the bushels. If you're raising a seed product, you've also got the quality factor to factor in. So if you have a field that yields 75 bushel per acre of seed beans, you might think, well, that's great. But if the germ on that particular field comes back at 65%, there's not much we can do with that product. So all those bushels are just going to get sold for commodity beans. So there's a lot of management decisions that go into that, a lot of risks that gets taken, a lot of assumptions that get made, and in the end, hopefully we have an adequate supply of the products that you want to plant next year. But that's always a bit of a challenge. We're never perfect. The one thing that we know when we sign off on any crop plan is it's never going to be exactly what we wished it would be, because after another season happens, you learn more, things change, people's perceptions of products change. You always wish you could go back and redo something. This year is a little bit more that way than normal, probably. And so that's what we're kind of feeling, some of those pain points with the tightness of some of the corn products that you might have experienced, the tightness of some of the soybean products that you might have experienced. Having a strong sales year, which is contributing to that tightness as well. But we'll manage through that as best we can, and we do the absolute best we can to get everybody the product that they really wanted to have. So with that, I think unless we got any questions that have come in, Jennifer, I think I'll move on to maybe a little bit of an update on SmartStaxPro. That's a new technology that's available to try for the first time in the 2022 growing season. So if you haven't talked with your FSR or your dealer about SmartStaxPro, I'll share a little bit more about it. We've talked about SmartStaxPro on here in some previous episodes. Basically, it's corn rootworm 3 is what we called it for several years in research. It's the third generation corn rootworm technology. It's a three-way stack, three modes of action for corn rootworm protection. And it's the first corn rootworm technology on the market that is using a non-BT source for resistance to corn rootworm. So basically, it still has the same two BT proteins that are in SmartStaxPro, that are in SmartStax, with the addition of a new component, which is an RNAi-based technology that adds that third mode of action to make SmartStaxPro. SmartStaxPro is going to be adopted extremely quickly in parts of the country where corn rootworm pressure are heavy and where we're having lots of challenges with corn rootworms overcoming the current traits that are in the market today. And SmartStaxPro is going to very quickly become the new standard of control for corn rootworm in those markets. So you might remember when Jim Donnelly was on with me back in the summer, and we were talking about corn rootworm. Jim has two territories north of me. So Jim's got the northern part of Illinois, and pretty night and day difference between Jim's territory and mine for corn rootworm pressure. In fact, we were joking recently, looking at our crop plans for that. We were talking about that crop planning process for the 2023 sales year. And when I look at, what we're planning to sell in 23 versus what Jim's geography is planning to sell in 23, their conversion to SmartStaxPro is extremely aggressive and extremely rapid. There's tremendous demand, tremendous need. Tremendous amount of challenges going on with corn rootworm in northern Illinois. And so their circumstances are quite a bit different than ours. To be honest, one of our biggest challenges we've got right now with SmartStaxPro is, do we have fields that have heavy enough rootworm pressure to justify something better than SmartStax? And in most cases, currently we don't. I'm awfully glad to have that tool in our toolbox, because one of these days we will have that kind of corn rootworm pressure again. We've seen it before. We'll see it again. We could see a change to more continuous corn production like we were 10 or so years ago, or we could see heavier variant rootworm pressure. For the parts of the country that are battling rootworm now, SmartStaxPro is going to be a real blessing for them. For us, it's a nice luxury to have, but we're going to be balancing between how much SmartStax, how much Double Pro, how much Tercepta, how much SmartStaxPro do we want in our corn lineup. So those are really the four trait options that will be coming from DeKalb. Sprinkle in a little bit of conventional and some other specialty stuff on top of that. And that's the mix of traits that we're trying to manage in the appropriate percentages to make sure we've got what you're going to want to have on your farm. So if you are doing any corn on corn, especially if you're doing any long-term continuous corn, I would really encourage you to take a look at some SmartStaxPro. If you're using SmartStax today on bean stubble, just as a precaution, I would say SmartStaxPro is not really designed for that circumstance. I believe there's a lot of SmartStax corn getting planted in our geography today on ground that has little or no corn rootworm pressure. People like the peace of mind of having protection from rootworm. They remember how bad it was 10 years ago. They don't want to go back to that. They don't want to take the chance. They're very happy with the performance they've been getting from SmartStax, so they continue to plant it. If that's your situation, I would recommend staying with SmartStax. If you're doing some corn on corn, especially if it's long-term continuous corn, and absolutely if you have seen higher levels of feeding than you would like to see on your SmartStax, that's definitely a place you want to look at SmartStaxPro. So we'll have 3 hybrids available for planting in 22. It's 107 day, 111 day, and 115 day. And if you want to take a look at those products on your farm, reach out to your dealer, reach out to your FSR. We'll have a reasonable supply of trial of material for those hybrids, and all good products, good agronomic products. The 107 and the 115 were brand new genetics this year. So the base genetics on those hybrids are DKC 5771 and DKC 6584. So you might have remembered seeing those as new hybrids in 21. And then the third hybrid, the 111 day, that hybrid is brand new germplasm that you'll see for the first time as a SmartStaxPro. So there's also a new numbering system that goes with the SmartStaxPro, just to call this out. So when you see them, instead of our old numbering system where you add 60 or 50, thank you, Jennifer. You add 50 to the first 2 digits. So if a DeKalb hybrid was, so let's say 6434. So 64, you add 50 to 64, 114-day maturity hybrid. And then the last 2 digits were kind of placeholders that kind of sort of mean something, but it's a little bit complicated and hard to follow that. So basically in the old numbering system, which we are going to continue to use for the near-term future on the non-SmartStaxPro products, the first 2 digits would tell you the maturity. In the new numbering system that we're switching to with new hybrids that have SmartStaxPro, it's even easier to know what the maturity is because the first 3 digits in the number actually are the maturity. So DKC 111-33 is the new 111-day SmartStaxPro. All SmartStaxPro hybrids will end in a 3. I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's probably too hard to remember. But DKC 111-33, DKC 107-33, DKC 115-33 are the 3 new SmartStaxPro hybrids that will be available to try in 22. We will have those 3 hybrids along with some other new hybrids that we're producing for sales in 23. As I said, some parts of the country are going to convert very rapidly to SmartStaxPro. Other areas will convert more slowly. We have territories that sell about half SmartStax and about half non-SmartStax. We have territories that are 90% non-SmartStax. Jennifer would be in that type of an area. And so generally, as you go south and as you go west in Illinois, everybody sells less rootworm corn because there's less rootworm pressure. So it's really surprising to farmers from, say, Champaign County to realize that farmers in Hancock County have never planted SmartStax corn on rotated acres. There are, people in the western part of the state, the southern part of the state, that if you've stayed primarily with rotation, you may have never grown rootworm corn. You've never had a need to grow rootworm corn. As you go north in Illinois, there's a lot more corn on corn, a lot more pressure in first-year corn. As you go east in Illinois, that's the variant population started in Ford, Iroquois County in northeastern Illinois. And so the variant population has always been higher, I would say, from about Interstate 59 or 5139 east in Illinois. So as you go east, as you go north, saw a lot more rootworm corn. As you go into southern Illinois, that's primarily all double pro unless it's long-term continuous corn. And in our team geography in West Central Illinois, it varies as you slide north in our team. We get in a little more SmartStax. As you slide east in our team, You get into more SmartStax. As you go south and west, it's primarily all Double Pro. So it varies quite a bit as you travel around the team. And it's nice to have, we're really going to be in a good situation from here in the next few years. If you've got, really bad rootworm issues, SmartStaxPro. If you've got some level of rootworm pressure, but it's not severe, SmartStax is probably fine. If you've got no rootworm concerns, that's what Double Pro or Tricepta would be designed for with those above ground trait packages. So I don't know, Jennifer, is anything you think I should mention on Pro that I didn't?
Not necessarily on Pro, but I like the trajectory that we're going on, and I think that we can kind of make this a pipeline conversation. So
right.
What else would you like to discuss as far as like maybe smart corn? We talk about SmartStaxPro, but do you want to maybe get into smart corn that we've got maybe seeing in 2023, 2024, 2025? And then also we've already kind of discussed the bean conversation, but at some point maybe you want to cover off where the beans are headed and what new stuff we've got coming in for 2023.
Right. So from an overall pipeline standpoint, it's going to be pretty exciting, pretty interesting, possibly a little frustrating for customers, and maybe frustrating a little bit for some of us that don't like change as much as other people do. But when you look at everything that's coming in the pipeline, so we just talked about SmartStaxPro. Well, there's something called Corn Rootworm 4, which is going to be the next generation of rootworm technology. And we've seen weeds, we've seen with diseases, we've seen with insects. I mean, basically everything that we try to protect the crop from, they have the ability to develop resistance to the way we try to control them about as quickly in some cases as we can come up with a new way to control them. So that research is going to continue ongoing. We know that for a while SmartStax looked perfect. Today SmartStaxPro looks close to perfect, but it's not going to be that way long term. So Corn Rootworm 4 will be the next generation technology that's coming in the next few years. Jennifer mentioned Smart Corn, which is kind of a brand name for the short statured corn that we're developing. You've probably heard something about that. There'll be that'll be out more easily to see in trials in 22. Probably going to have some kind of small test market sales or groundbreaker type program in 23. And we'll hopefully be ready for a full launch of that by 24. And really that's kind of an innovation that we think has the ability to, pretty dramatically change if you want to, the way you manage your crop. It's going to give you access to that field with ground equipment for greater part of the season. Will give you the ability to manage fertility differently, to manage population differently, to manage possibly row spacing differently if you want to. You won't have to, but if you have an interest in narrow rows and high populations, the smart corn system would certainly lend itself to that. Our concept for that technology is not going to be something that forces you into crazy high populations or narrow rows. But if you are ready to take that step, that technology will certainly enable you to do that better than standard corn. In addition to the additional management opportunities that technology is going to offer, it's going to offer some pretty good defensive characteristics from the standpoint of less green snap risk, less lodging, less wind damage. It seems like wind events, whether you believe they're getting more severe or more frequent, there's a lot of acres of corn every year impacted by wind, and the new short statured corn hybrids are not immune to hurricane force winds. When we had plots out in recent years up to about 70 or 80 mile an hour winds, we see pretty good protection. Once you get beyond that and you're talking hurricane or tornado force winds, everything's got a limit of what it can take. But we've seen in some strong wind events across the corn growing region the last two growing seasons where we've had smart corn out in the marketplace and trials. it has really separated itself from a green snap and wind damage standpoint. So yet to be seen, how many people, want to radically change the way they raise corn. I like to point out to people that just because this technology gives you the opportunity to spend all summer, driving through your cornfields, I don't know how many people want to do that. I know that's not my idea of a good time, is spending all summer driving through big corn, even though it's going to be short enough that you'll be able to do that. I don't know how many people are going to want to do that, but I do think a lot of people would like to have the flexibility to have easier access to their field, flexibility to do things that would not require an aerial application, and also have the ability to sleep a little better at night when the wind's getting a little gustier than you would like it to be. On the soybean side of things, lots of new technologies coming in soybeans as well. Probably the next one that we get lots of questions about would be what we call HT4, which that'll be a 5-way trait stack that combines dicamba, 2,4-D, glyphosate, glufosinate, and HPPD resistance in one bean. And that's something that I think a lot of people, regardless of what your favorite herbicide program is in soybeans today, the idea of having one bean that would be resistant to whatever herbicide program you or any of your neighbors choose to use sounds pretty appealing to me. That technology cannot get here fast enough for me. So we are, Jennifer's nodding in agreement there. We are working diligently to get that product ready to go as quickly as we can. It's, I wish it was next year or the year after that. We're talking mid this decade on that technology. So it's not exactly right around the corner, but certainly eagerly anticipating that next class of soybean weed or herbicide resistance that we call HT4. So, and into, the traits, obviously, breeding advances ongoing every year. We're kind of known as a trait company, but we invest a lot more annually on genetics and germplasm and traditional breeding technologies than we do traits. There's also a lot of new molecule, traditional chemistry molecules coming as well, from herbicides to fungicides to insecticides, nematicides, and seed treatments and other things that are being developed. So very, very robust pipeline portfolio of, not just new hybrids, not just new traits, not just new systems, not just new herbicides, not just new fungicides, not just new insecticides, but just lots of new products that we're going to bring out to the marketplace over the next decade. So pretty exciting time to be part of Bayer, and a lot of development work to do to get all that stuff figured out. And I think there'll be a lot of excuse me. There'll be a lot of turnover as well, because every time you bring out a new trait system, so for example, we're launching SmartStaxPro. Well, we're launching smart corn or short statured corn. You have to, convert, hybrids to these different systems, and every time you do that, you're changing your products over, and so we're going to see probably more rapid turnover of products. Sometimes farmers get frustrated with us that we bring stuff out so fast, and by the time you get comfortable planting something, we're ready to switch you to something else sometimes. And when you bring out a lot of new stuff, that's kind of a little bit of a downside of that, is you're going to have a lot more turnover in products. For example, with the conversion that we went through the last 2 years to XtendFlex. We have a lot of XtendFlex beans that we sell 1 year, maybe 2, and then we're moving on to something newer and better. And sometimes you get a little frustrated with that. You would rather that we kind of slow down a little bit and let you get used to stuff more. But we're always trying to bring out those better products as quickly as we can.
Lance, if you kind of talked about early on about what we were forecasting for this year. So what maybe new products are you excited about that will be coming out in the 2023 season, either corn or beans for that matter?
Yeah. So this is a fun time of year when you're in my line of work. So the way we bring new products out is every year in December, the agronomists will find out what the new release products are. These are the products that we're going to have in commercial plots for the first time in the upcoming growing season. So our FSRs are currently working on finalizing their plot seed orders so we can get that material out to dealers and out to growers that we work with on commercial trials. And so there's a lot of new products that are coming out this year. There's new SmartStax hybrids, there's new Tricepta hybrids, there's new Double Pro hybrids, there's new SmartStaxPro hybrids. So in the case of corn, we've got 4 different trait systems that all have brand new products coming out for 23. We will have those for the first time in our commercial trials in 22. And you'll be able to see those in your dealer plots and be able to get some firsthand experience with those through the summer. So lots of new products, probably more new products than normal. Some of them are new versions of current genetics that we know, but most of them are brand new genetics. So lots to work through there from a crop planning standpoint. And one of the things that I'm the most proud of our DeKalb lineup is the depth of the portfolio and the number of products that we have. And it seems like every year, we think we've got too many products. Our dealers tell us we've got too many products. You tell us we've got too many products, but somebody wants to buy every product we've got. And so it's really hard to weed stuff out of the lineup. So we brought out 11 new hybrids that we're crop planning for 23, and we only phased out maybe 2 or 3 that we did in 21. So it seems like every year that portfolio just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's a real challenge for us to manage. It's nice to have the options, and we appreciate that somebody out there wants to plant virtually every hybrid that we have, and we manage about roughly 60 different corn hybrids on our sales team. So that might surprise you, that because most of you probably aren't planting more than 3 or 4 or 5 different DeKalb hybrids. That we offer 60 plus individual different hybrids just on one sales team, and that's just in a maturity range from about 105 roughly to 120. So there's a lot of products that we manage that you'll never plant, but somebody else is planting those products. So and some of that's being driven by trait, by different trait options. Some hybrids we've got a conventional version, a waxy version, a Double Pro version, a SmartStax version. There's other hybrids that have Tricepta versions. There's hybrids that have SmartStaxPro versions. So some of our hybrids have just one version that we offer in the same base genetics. Soybeans are a little simpler just because of the dominance of XtendFlex, and that is our system today. So we're, for all intents and purposes, 100% XtendFlex with just a small amount of conventional soybeans that we still offer. So we're about 98% XtendFlex, and about 2% conventional is what we offer in the Asgrow brand. So it's a little bit simpler on the soybean side of things, but lots of new products coming out there as well. The new products that we're bringing out are just to improve agronomics and yield of the existing Asgrow lineup. So it's not so much looking for different trait versions as it is just looking for improvements in the XtendFlex system.
Perfect. We actually did have a question come in from our old pal Dirt Doctor.
Okay, thank you.
So you can always count on it.
Yeah, I got my core group of people that I can always count on for a question. So
and he's actually got a really good one here. So
He's always got really good
yeah, of
questions.
course, always. So you were mentioning as we as FSRs are playing our plots, and that's how we look at data.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a producer, what is the best way for them to compare at a larger scale, compare hybrids in field? He's making a commentary of whether it's better with a split planter. He does utilize climate field view, so he's just trying to get the best out of it. So what would you recommend for a grower to compare hybrids on their farm?
Right. So that's a great question. And it's challenging, honestly, as a farmer to know, how much information do you need to look at? What's the best source of information? Do you just go off what happens on your farm? Most farmers put a lot of priority on what happens on their farm, and I respect and I understand that. From an agronomic standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, you want to be a little bit careful how much emphasis you put on one data point, regardless of where that one data point comes from. So I like to challenge farmers that, you'll probably make better decisions looking at 100 pieces of data from a geography that, might represent a third of a state than you are looking at, one or two side-by-sides from your farm. If you could have, multiple years of data from your farm, a lot of different products looked at on your farm, always great to have data from your farm, but you can't look at everything on your farm. And I know people that restrict themselves, they won't plant a product on their farm until they've tried a product on their farm. And, and while I understand that, the product life cycles of products are fairly short. And if it takes you a couple years to get comfortable growing something, in some cases, you might miss out on the best years of that product. So I think farmers are always going to feel a little bit pressured to maybe adopt new products a little quicker than sometimes you're comfortable with. As far as to answer your question a little more directly, I mean, I think split planter trials are obviously a great way to compare products. I don't necessarily promote, splitting planters on every field. It complicates scripting. It complicates satellite imagery. It complicates, in some cases, management. So from an agronomic standpoint, I frankly would prefer to have one hybrid per field, because there's lots of issues that come up sometimes when you've got multiple hybrids in a field. If you're trying to do scripting or you're trying to look at satellite imagery, you can sometimes get some wonky stuff going on because of those hybrid splits. But if you're just wanting to evaluate hybrids, a split planter trial in every field, mapped, at planting, you good yield monitor data, good calibrated yield monitor, everything geospatially referenced. I'm a big believer in utilizing technology. Climate is our platform. There's other products out there. As long as you're using something that is enabling you to capture that data and utilize that data and store that data and be able to retrieve and research and analyze that data, there are lots of different ways to look at performance by soil type. That is a little bit limited because the soil type data that everybody is analyzing is just the Surgo soil data from the government that is sometimes accurate, sometimes not accurate on a particular field. But you can sometimes see some things by soil type. But yeah, if you want to look at at a couple hybrids against each other, split planter or block planted in a field is a good way to go. The field region report capabilities within climate are a really nice way to compare two products in a defined geographic area. A lot of the different systems that are out there will give you a summary at the end, and you had 400 acres of this that yielded X, and you had 100 acres of this that yielded B, and you had 50 acres of this that yielded whatever. Be a little bit careful making those sort of comparisons, because if this product was on this farm and that product was on that farm, those may or may not be valid comparisons. So just make sure that that you're making the most valid comparison you can make. The other thing that really messes with yield data on farm is harvest moisture and harvest timing. So, whatever you harvest first typically is going to have a yield advantage over whatever you harvest last. So if you had a product that you harvested at 25% on September 5th that yielded 240, and you had a product that you harvested, on October 10th at 16% that made 240, the one that made 240 a month later and 10 points drier, would have yielded a lot more, harvested at the same time as the other hybrid. So sometimes harvest moisture and harvest date, really play a big factor in product performance as well. So lots of things to consider. I'd say look at as much data as you can. If you do plots on farm, that's great. If you don't, that's okay too. Farmers that do their own plots, I feel a little bit guilty sometimes. I want you to do plots because you help us evaluate our products. If you do a plot, I'm going to tell you, don't base all your decisions on your own plot, because it's only one plot. But that doesn't diminish the value of that plot as, one of the whole that's out there. So when I look at data, I like to look at a fairly broad geography. I do a lot of what I call radius reports. So I'll run like 150 or 200 mile radius around the central part of our sales team. So that's going to get me into Missouri. That's going to get me into Iowa. That's going to get me all the way across to Eastern Illinois. That's going to get me pretty close up to Wisconsin, and it'll get me down about to St. Louis. And that's about the size of the geography that I look at. And then, you look at multiple years of data. You look at as many comparisons as you can. And it's always tough to not overreact to the environment that just happened. And one thing we never have figured out, I was talking with one of our climate guys about this yesterday. The technology that we've got from scripting and the ability to predict performance and script things out and recommend products and do variable rate scripting and all the things that we can do. The biggest limitation we've got of all that stuff is we still can't predict the future. We are trying to predict the future off of the past. And in hindsight, at the end of the year, we can pretty well always make sense of things. The biggest challenge we have is we don't have the ability to know how the next year that's coming, how is it going to be different from last year? We know it's going to be different. We know it's going to be different in a way that's going to affect performance. Unfortunately, it's just that crystal ball is still a little fuzzy, and that's the biggest limitation we have is in predicting future performances. We don't know what the environment's going to be.
So you talked about the trials that we do, and we try to look back at the past. So I'm going to do a shameless plug here for Mr. Chris Callowell.
Yes.
We had our last episode, we brought Chris on to talk about crown rot and his trials that he had done. And he had hinted at the fact he was going to put a couple of videos on our YouTube page. Mm-hmm. And that has happened. So I want everybody to know that actually the highlight video on our YouTube channel, the first video you see, mm-hmm. actually is Chris's crown rot trial data from the last 3 years. So please go ahead and take an opportunity to check that out, because like Lance said, we can't predict the future. But I think Chris has got some really good data on what crown rot's done the last 3 years. We obviously saw a large impact from that this past year. Yeah. So we can maybe attempt to make some adjustments for next year based off of those videos and his commentary.
Yeah, he's got a lot. He's got a lot more people interested in listening to what he has to say after living through the 2021 growing season, and hopefully 2022. We don't see anywhere near the crown rot and other disease pressure that we did in 21. But if we do, I think we'll have a better idea how to handle it, or at least a better idea what's coming based on the work that Chris and others have done. And we're currently in the process of developing plot sites and treatment programs and protocols for that type of work that we're going to do in 22 as well.
All right, so we're in our last few minutes here, so I think we can go ahead and start wrapping things up. I think we are about 10 weeks away from planting, though, for some folks in some areas. So do you have maybe some advice in the next 10 weeks? What can anybody do to prepare to make themselves most successful? What are kind of your thoughts on the planting season this coming spring?
Yeah, I think now's a good time of year to be finalizing product positioning, placement, where you want to plant those hybrids, what populations you want to plant them at. Do you want to create some variable rates scripts? That's something that's very easy to do within the climate platform, and I think is a greatly underutilized technology. A lot of us have planters that are capable of executing a variable rate script. We just haven't ever bothered to create one, the load into the planter to let it execute one. So that's something that if you want to play around with that, that's it's a good time to plan that out. I think another thing that would be really good to spend some time on, if you haven't already done this, is sit down with your retail supplier and figure out what your plan is, and your plan B and your plan C on different weed control programs in both corn and soybeans. The chemistry market is just a little weird right now, as you've probably heard, with products being in tight supply, and some things are hard to get. Some things are significantly more expensive than they were a year ago. So if you haven't sat down and planned that out, you might not want to just assume you're going to do all the same stuff that you did a year ago from a weed control standpoint. And the other thing I'd ask people to spend some time thinking about, with the fertilizer price situation that we've discussed several times before, I am a little bit concerned that there's going to be less weed and feed going on this spring, where people would traditionally put on maybe 30 to 60 units of UAN solution as a carrier, or part of the carrier with their chemical program, and put a readily available liquid source of nitrogen out right prior to planting in corn. And I think there were some folks that maybe utilized a higher rate of anhydrous last fall because they knew that was going to be a lot more economical for them than that UAN would be. If you haven't talked to your supplier, don't be surprised if you get a price of about $1 a unit for nitrogen in the form of UAN. And when you look at, if you usually run, say, 15 gallon of UAN as a carrier with your herbicide and put on 45 units of nitrogen, that might be $45 just to put on that 45 units of nitrogen this spring. And are you still going to do that? I think there's going to be temptation to cut that out or reduce that down. And I guess the caution I would urge is the nitrogen that you applied in the fall is really not going to be available to that corn plant till it's probably about that tall. And it's a long way from here to here, with a lot of important stuff going on within that plant during that time. And we really don't want that corn plant to sense that it's short on nitrogen, because if that corn plant senses in an early seedling stage that it's short on nitrogen, it gets conservative. And when it gets conservative, that means it gets conservative in the size of the potential ear that it's going to create. And if that plant gets conservative and it, thinks it's in a nitrogen limiting environment because it can't sense all the nitrogen that's down there, 8 inches deep when it's in the seedling stage, you might be sacrificing yield potential. And even though, that nitrogen may look too expensive to afford, with the potential commodity prices that we've still got, giving up bushels might be even more expensive than paying for the fertilizer. So just a little something to think about if you're looking for ways to cut corners on your fertility program. Just be sure that it's not cutting a corner someplace that's going to do yourself more harm than good.
Well, we appreciate your time today, Lance. We appreciate everybody joining us today. Obviously, everybody that's here now at the live knows about the live, but also don't forget that you can catch these Ask the Agronomist Ask the Agronomist episodes
Yeah.
on our YouTube page
Yeah.
on a playlist.
All if you're really bored and you want to consume Ask the Agronomist in mass quantities, all 21 episodes from last year are still on the YouTube live page. So
I will say, when I pulled the data on our over the Christmas break time, we did actually have an increase on all of our videos. So people did take our advice to sit down and watch Ask
Cool.
the Agronomist
Cool.
over the holidays. So we appreciate your support, everybody.
yeah,
Sure.
so keep your ideas coming to make the program better. I've got lots of things I hope to try to do this year in season 2. I'd like to do some more broadcasts from remote locations. I'd like to get more different agronomists, some other agronomy experts that I work with involved. When we had Chris and Jim on with me last year, those were always, I think, some of our more popular episodes, and so that's something we want to look at. And I also have a goal of we'll see how this goes. I would like to start to move these around to different dealer locations and maybe have a live studio grower audience participate in Ask the Agronomist. I think that would be a fun thing to try. So if you've got ideas, things you'd like to see, things you'd like to see us talk about, things you'd like to see us do, people that you'd like to see on Ask the Agronomist, please hit me up, text or email. Your suggestions for how we can improve the content mean a lot to me, and I appreciate your feedback. Thanks, everybody. Everybody stay safe. Everybody stay healthy. Next episode is when?
January 27th.
January 27th. So we'll be back with you 2 weeks from today. And thanks again. All right.